Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we're taking a look at Vaults of Varn, Issue 4. Now this is part of an ongoing series that we have looked at in the past. This Vaults of Varn hardback covers the first 3 issues, combining all of that material. So this is the next step in this series, and I was really excited to take a look at it because I think it is my favorite science fantasy setting for role-playing games. Of all the artifacts the ancients left littered across the cerulean sands of Varn, few are more imposing than the canted bulwark of the pale pharaoh steel that is known variously as the Great Wall of Varn, the Weeping Wall, the Backbone of the Gods, the Titan Spine, or the Impediment. The wall forms the western boundary of the trackless varnished interior, an artificial mountain range visible from a month's ride away. At a distance, it appears to be a colorless, irregular blockade that roils uneasily in the heat haze, more akin to the fortress walls of ice that girdle the Earth's polar regions than any work of human hands. Up close, the wall is more impressive still, a colossal ruin that exceeds 4 leagues in height, dwarfing even the Lazul Mountains that embrace its northern limit. What's really neat is I've been reading the blog that Leo Hunt, the author of this, writes, and I've been seeing him develop some of this material, so it's really cool to see it all put together into one zine. Varn is a far future science fantasy setting, and it has some very distinctive features. So one is that it's set in the land of Varn, which is this blue desert, these blue dunes rolling onto the horizon. And this new issue right here adds in the wall, this massive megastructure that has a vertical aspect to it. You can travel up and down as well as side to side. The flavor of this science fantasy draws a lot from books like Dune, Hyperion, and the Book of the New Sun. It's a sky blue desert littered with the ruins of the far future. It's inhabited by true kin, which are humans, and a lot of different types of mutants. The sun is a dying red giant. Varn is both archaic and futuristic. To the south is the new hegemony, a proud, expanding true kin empire that is trying to push its way towards the wall. Nanomachines are inside everything. Nobody can agree on the cause, but there was a great collapse. Before the great collapse, the planet was dominated by the autarky, a dictatorship enacted by a dynasty of genetically modified god kings. And even before that, the Earth was ruled by the AIs called the Titans, and those are going to have an influence on the wall. This is a stapled zine, but the design is really well done. Some of the lettering is a bit hard to read. This font is like a lot of letters are cut in half, so you have to kind of turn it sideways and squint your eyes to read it. The typeface for the body of the text, I'm a little conflicted on. It does look nice, but the main problem is that at the small sizes that it is using here, there's a lot of dazzle because there's a lot of very thin lines, which makes it a little bit hard to read. It's not really too bad though. Now, the system that this uses is Knave, which is the system that I created, and it's going to go really well with Knave 2nd Edition. The rules of Knave 2nd Edition are close enough to the 1st edition that it's not going to make a big difference, and Knave adds a ton of new random tables for generating all sorts of stuff, and as we'll see in the Vaults of Varn zine, that's going to become very relevant because there's lots of great generators in here as well that you could combine. But because it is based on the Knave system, that also means it's going to be very broadly compatible with anything old school D&D-ish. To start out, we have a basic description of the wall, this enormous multiple mile high structure, and no one really knows where it came from or what it's doing, which is often the case in these far future science fantasy settings. One big theory is that it was a conduit for transferring information across vast distances, maybe between one AI and another. It also has a big cooling system, which is very important for life there. It's right next to the ocean, and it's pulling up huge amounts of seawater and converting it into this kind of sweet liquid that tastes a little bit like salt water that is being pumped through this huge structure. And that means that there's lots of liquid for people to live on. That's a big deal in a huge desert. The wall is not solid all the way through. It is pockmarked. It is riven with cracks and with tunnels and conduits for this liquid. So people have found all sorts of ways to live inside it. And there are 2 major cities that this book is going to focus on. The lower one is Sargatea, the narrow city. So this is going to be right down at the base of the wall. And there is a crack going all the way through it from one side to another. This structure is so huge that it blocks off a whole section of the continent from the ocean. And the only way to cross over is to go through this city. This makes it an extremely important trade city. If you want to transfer goods between the desert of Varn and the ocean, you got to go through them. Now, the other city is Austriel, the city unconquered. And in contrast, this one is very, very high up. And it is ruled by a race of harpy people that the humans have to worship. These 2 cities are in constant conflict, if not outright war. And although there's been many battles and the lower city usually wins the battle, the upper city has never been conquered. It's just too high up. It's too difficult to get troops up there and to hold any positions. This political conflict between these two cities is a big driving force of this campaign, because all the different NPCs and factions you run into are going to be somewhere on this alignment on which city that they are allied with and which city they are enemies with, and you can play off of that if you're smart and how you manipulate the NPCs around you. There's a number of options down here for the kinds of campaigns you could run using just this zine, because as we'll see, even though it's a pretty short zine, there is a ridiculous amount of content in here for you to use. The party could be trailblazers, where you are carving a path between two settlements. You could be fighting sky pirates. You could be sky pirates. You could try and find the black toxic sludge that leaks from the wall. This isn't the liquid stuff that everyone lives off of. It's a totally different thing that wizards want. You could be agents of the secret police for that upper city. You could be beetle ranchers. You could be hegemony spies, because there is that big human kingdom that's a bit far off that wants to have more political power here. So you could be infiltrating and maybe trying to start some wars to weaken the political forces here. Maybe you're trying to stop the levelers, which is a faction that wants to destroy the wall entirely, or maybe you're just vault raiders. You're trying to find treasure. Next, we'll have a look at some of the new ancestries that you can play as. But first, a quick shout out to today's sponsor. Summer is coming up, and our fantastic longtime sponsor, Into the AM, has a new line of relaxed button-up shirts available over on their web store, like the one that I'm wearing right now. I am consistently impressed by how comfortable these shirts are, and they have a big variety of styles to choose from. They even have a deal where if you buy 3 of these shirts in a pack, you get 30% off, and then you get 10% more off if you use my link down in the description below. Make sure to check out the rest of their apparel as well. They have some fantastic t-shirts with sci-fi and fantasy themes that work really well with RPGs. Their jeans are some of my favorites. Really, it's just top-notch clothing. I wear them all the time. Thanks again to Into the AM for sponsoring. And now let's get back to the video. All right, let's take a look at some of these ancestries. So first off, we have the Harpies, the rulers of this upper kingdom. They have things like hollow bones. Of course, they can fly. And their ancestral enemy is that lower city, Sargatea. All of the different ancestries have lots of random tables. In this case, 8 D20 random tables to generate your particular harpy. There's tons of new flavor that you can throw into there to make them distinct. Maybe their body is bony, their face is harsh, their plumage is raw umber, their feet are soft and perfumed, and so on and so forth. You might also be a wallborn, which look an awful lot like human beings, except they have monkey feet. This makes you much, much better at climbing. You're going to automatically succeed at climbs that would challenge an average human, and you only make a dex save if it is really, really difficult. There are some factions and some NPCs you can run into at each of the cities. The 40 families is the main political force in the lower city. There's not really 40 of them. There's now 36 of these families, but 40 sounds better. You might meet Priam Houndsfoot, who's the harbor keeper of Sargatea. And so he is the one that is conducting and managing the trade between one side of the wall and the other. The secret twist here is that he is actually working for the upper city, their arch enemies. He doesn't want anyone to know that, but it is making him very rich to play one side off against the other. I love how there's information here about what would happen if these NPCs were your ally or if they were your enemy, because this is the sort of game where there is not a pre-scripted plot. Anything could happen. It's really led by the player's actions. You have to have these contingencies in place for what if they do this. Another faction in the lower city is the Sargatean Guard, the Grand General Diod, I think that's how you say his name, Keeper of the Narrow Pass. He is the guy running the army. He is extremely good at tactics. He is very popular. He's really good at his job, and he wants to go to war. He hates that upper city more than anything. If you also want to go to war, he's probably your guy. But if you're trying to make peace or negotiate between the two cities, he's going to get in your way. The Royal Roost are the families that are running the upper city, and Ayazima, hopefully that's right, the third queen beyond the sky, is the newest harpy queen of the upper city. And she is young, she's just come into power, and she wants to make a name for herself. So she is also eager for war. There's the secret police of the upper city and the woman who runs it, which is Chatelaine Aucluria, the queen's left hand. And she, in contrast to that bull guy, she does not want to go to war. She is much more circumspect and wants the long-term survival of the city. She is not so happy that the new Harpy Queen is so bloodthirsty, and she's beginning to think that perhaps an accident might have to be arranged, which maybe you, the players, could help her with. The other faction is the Levelers, which is the secretive organization run by this synthetic leader, and it wants to destroy the wall entirely. The wall creates divisions. If we leveled it, and there would be freedom and trade between one side and the other, and there would be no barriers in anyone's life anymore. It's very utopian, and it's impossible. How can you destroy a structure this big? And everyone hates the Levelers, no matter what city you're in, because they want to destroy the city or the building that you call home. Here's a map of Sargatea. So we have, this is the desert side of it. You can see there's a big crack in the wall, and then this is the opposite side against the sea. So you can go through one side and you would come out on the other side over here. Austriel, the upper city, is made up of these frozen towers and spires with all these flags. It's a totally different look, and it's right next to the Grand Ichor Fall. So this enormous torrent of that water-like liquid that's pouring out of the wall, which provides them with everything that they need. To get up this high, you're probably going to need to take one of the different flying vehicles, like perhaps one of these Zeppelins, and dock over there. The wall is broken into three main strata. You have the low wall, which is the base of the structure, where everything that leaks has come to rest. There's the mid wall, the most verdant and prosperous strata, and the upper wall, a windswept and cold territory of the harpies, stratusfolk, and other flying creatures. Traveling between locations is going to depend on the direction that you're going, right? If you're traveling vertically up, then it's going to be much slower going than if you are trying to travel down. I like the encounter system here. You roll a d6 for encounters for each half day of the PC's travel. A 1 indicates an active encounter that involves the PCs. A 2 indicates a passing encounter that does not actively seek the PCs. And a 3 gives a hint of a nearby creature or settlement. That means that you're going to be seeing things nearby a lot more frequently, but they're not always going to be directly interacting with you. I like that because it gives you more of an option of whether you want to get involved with this thing that you've seen coming up. It might be an enemy, it might be an ally. If you're fighting on the side of the wall, then you're in vertical combat, and that is a pretty dangerous situation because if you fall off, you could be falling for miles. I really like this because it adds a level of tension to everything that you do. You think very carefully about where you're standing. Is the enemy above you? You're going to have a harder time hitting him because if they're below you, then you can just drop stuff on them. How well anchored to the wall are you? Is there some way that you can get inside the wall, inside a crack to get yourself more protected? Is there something below you that you can grab onto if someone knocks you off? The fact that gravity is always in play here means that there's a lot of dynamism. There's a lot of held kinetic energy, and that can get very exciting. The other big thing to keep in mind is laments. So this is a feature of the wall, especially if you're traveling inside the wall rather than on the outside of it. Because every once in a while at random times, you roll a 3d6 to figure out when this occurs, there's going to be a huge torrent, called a lament, where all of that liquid gushes forth and starts filling up parts of the wall. And people who live there realize that this is the case and they're kind of prepared for it. But if you're a traveler, you could be caught unawares and have a very bad time. To create a section of the wall that you're actually going to travel through, first you need a piece of paper about this size. Then you're going to divide it into 3 sections: upper wall, mid wall, and low wall. After that, you're going to grab a handful of d20s and you're just going to roll them onto the page. And where each of those d20 lands, that's where a location is. And that's going to correspond to these lists over here. Once you follow the rules over here for connecting all of these dice together, you now have a network, a point crawl that your characters can travel across. There's lots of possible locations for the low wall, the mid wall, and the upper wall, depending on where the die ended up. And each of these has an entire page with even more random generators just for that location type. There's also a generator down here for the routes themselves between the different locations. So maybe one of the routes is dripping labyrinths or rusting gantries. It was mapped in the past by smugglers, and is there a hazard here? Maybe it's just a monster lair, but it could also be flash ichor floods or a leap of faith. Most of the rest of the zine is going through each of these possible locations and giving you lots of random tables to flesh it out. So these can all be randomly generated as you go. Maybe you're at a crash site and the vehicle happens to be an alchemist balloon. Its cargo was frozen clones. The cause of the crash? Autopilot failure. And now it is choked with fines. There's hundreds, thousands of possible combinations for every one of these locations. It is great. This is exactly how I like to see settings created. So many setting books just go through and have paragraphs and paragraphs of text telling you the back history of their world. Not this book. This book gives you the content that you need to actually run it. It gives you millions of possible locations and things to see. You don't need to memorize a whole bunch of backstory. All you need to do is roll some dice and see what happens and just roll with that. Maybe you're up in a sky pirate den and the location is crooked. The pirates are reluctant to kill. Their airship is a gun jungle and the ill-gotten loot is vats of wine. What is the conflict going on in this pirate den? Well, you got NPC A, let's say it's a ship surgeon, and NPC B, greedy, malicious pirate. What is the source of their conflict? Maybe it's honor, and they're having a duel over it. Or maybe just improper pirate etiquette. Stratusfolk village, upper wall settlements, vineyards, way stations, weeps, Zeppelin ports. So much awesome stuff. Lots of different types of weird monsters are mentioned in the zine. So we have a little bestiary at the back. You got albino apes, always a classic. Anytime you have science fantasy, you need giant albino apes. It's just required. Cannon beetles, Carnifex mantis, chatter snipes, dream snakes, flashons, glider spiders, Goliath geckos, harpy raiders, myrmidon beetles, ogre harpies. I love this. The Vanta black panther. That is good. Maybe meet a void maw, a level 10 cyborg organism destined to live in the vacuum of space and Earth's upper atmosphere. They once defended space elevators and orbital structures from sabotage, although the days of their servitude are long gone, and they are driven now only to eat and grow. There's a table for sample encounters on the wall, for NPCs you find on the wall, and a little system for elixirs right here, which I think is quite clever for designing your own potions. Basically, if you kill a monster, you can try and take its body parts and convert those into potions if it makes sense, similar to the rules in Knave 2nd edition. The little twist here is that the type of monster that you are using as part of the potion is going to matter here. Because the more powerful the effect that you're trying to create, and that's up to the game master, the more types of essences that you need. So essences are blood comes from biological creatures, supercoolant comes from synthetic creatures, and so forth. If you want to have a really powerful potion, the game master just rules, wow, that is a really powerful effect. Then you need to have 6 different essences. So you need to have found 6 different types of creatures and boiled them down into this liquid to add into the potion. That means the more powerful the potion that you want, the bigger a variety, the more types of monsters, the further you have to explore in order to find all of those components. It's a nice, elegant solution. There's a page of toxins at the back here and some acknowledgements, and it does point out that just like the first edition of Knave, this is released under a Creative Commons attribution license. What does that mean? It means that anyone is free to remix, copy, hack, and add to the contents of this zine. All you have to do is give attribution to the creator, Leo Hunt. So there it is, Vaults of Varn issue 4. It's a beautiful little zine. A huge amount of love and effort has been poured into this to create a setting that is eminently gameable and is full of tons of variety and has that great science fantasy feel that I love. At the most recent convention I attended, I actually got to play in a session set in the world of Varn, and it was one of my favorite sessions at that convention. It's a really fun world to play in, and the books really help you run it, which is what a book should be doing. As usual, I will put links in the description below for where you can pick this up in PDF or in print form. And thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you next time.